Raelan, and you, if this resonates for you. That is kind of the big stuff. And here is what I would have done more of. Hey guys. So I recently realized that it's been almost 15 years to the day since I first got sick with chronic fatigue syndrome, and about 4 years or so now since I recovered. And in those 4 years since I recovered, I have been so immersed in learning everything that I can about recovery from conditions like CFS and now Long Covid. And from all of that, over 300 videos on this channel now on that topic, spoke to countless people and heard about their journeys. I've had a lot of opportunity to have new insights about my own recovery and just to understand it all better and just really reflect on what I would have done the same and what I would have done differently. So this video right here is, if I could only send one video back to myself in time when I first got sick 15 years ago, to that terrified, overwhelmed, confused person who had their life, it felt like, stripped away from them in an instant and was just suddenly trapped in a prison of suffering. This is the video that I would send to her, to me. And I put this out to you, not thinking that this is going to have all of your answers or going to be your exact fit, but in the hopes that maybe something here will resonate or maybe spark an insight for you or be validating, or at the very least, just help you to feel a little bit less alone in your experience. And I'm going to talk a lot to myself back then, and it's going to be like I'm talking to you, but if something I say doesn't fit, doesn't resonate, you're like, nope, I'm glad that was good for her or bad for her, but that is not the case for me, then good for you. Congratulate yourself for knowing that about yourself and trusting your own wisdom, and just, take from this what's helpful and leave the rest. And just before I dive in, I want to send a shout out and a thank you to Jim. Jim, thank you for becoming a channel member. There is a channel membership option. There's a join button just below this video if you would like to support the channel. I really do thank you, and it helps to keep all of this possible long term, and you'll also get access to perks that nobody else gets. Okay, so let's dive right in. What I would have done less of during my recovery, what I think really didn't have that much value, the things that I would have done more of, that I should have paid more attention to, and then also what I would have done exactly the same. So starting out with what I would have done less of. I wouldn't have given up on the world having anything to offer me. After all those years of reading literally hundreds of books and seeing countless doctors and all the research that I did, it just really seemed like I maxed out what was out there, and I just gave up. I'm like, no one else is going to have anything helpful, so I'm on my own here. And although I did recover, I now believe that I could have recovered faster had I not given up and kept searching, because there were new understandings, new insights, there's new information that became available after that point when I stopped searching, and I really think that would have sped up my recovery. I also would have quit the symptom tracking and the symptom monitoring and the symptom fixation and the trying to fix myself by addressing things symptom by symptom. A lot of what's out there tells you to keep logs and track all these different symptoms and how they're changing over time, and I feel that this does not provide value. Fixating on my symptoms never got me anywhere. If anything, it just made me more stressed out, and I really struggled to see from one day to the next, one week to the next, because they were all over the place. Like, was I getting better? Was I not? It was really tough to really figure things out, and I did not get anywhere by like, okay, let's try and fix our adrenal glands right now or whatever. I would have done less of that, focusing on things individually, and I say do more of just focusing on your body as a whole and bringing it back to health kind of as a unit instead of breaking it down into pieces. I also wouldn't have tried so many things at once. When I first got sick out of desperation, I think many of us can relate to this, you just start trying everything you can, everything you hear about, you just add it on. Like, I got to do that too. What if it helps? Oh, so-and-so's doing that, or this doctor or this therapist said that. And before you know it, you've got, first off, what is not only a really long and exhausting list of things that you're trying to do every day, but it's also really hard to see what's working and what's not. And it's really stressful, which in itself is going to be setting you back. So I would have slowed down the way I take things on. And not only that, I would have just started with the basics. So let's look at what I'm eating and clean it up a little bit. Let's try and get some more sleep. Let's try and reduce the stress in my life. Let's try and get a bit more sunlight, drink a bit more water, do a bit more breathing exercises, just all of those basic self-care things. And then from there, slowly add on one thing or try one thing at a time so that I can see if it's actually making a difference. And I mentioned diet, which is another one. I would do less of fixating on finding that perfect diet. I tried so many diets. I was convinced that there was one that was going to get me well, whether it was like keto or vegan or paleo or whatever. And I no longer think that that's true. And I know I talked about in my book, I put out a book talking about my journey being sick and then my journey through recovery. And when I did recover, I was eating a vegan diet. And I did see a lot of health benefits in my body, but I'm now no longer sure that those health benefits were specifically connected to my chronic fatigue syndrome. Yes, it helps me, and I recovered on that diet. Do you need to be on a vegan diet to recover? I doubt it. Do you need to be on any diet that has a label? I doubt it. I think listen to your body, trust your intuition, generally eat well. Don't worry about getting it perfectly. Don't worry about fitting into any kind of box, because I have not seen any one size fits all diet where people are like, yes, thank goodness, this was the path to health. I also would have skipped all of the supplements, every single one of them. I was taking at one point about $2,000 a month worth of supplements. It was about 100 pills a day. And this was mostly at the direction of my very well-meaning integrative medicine doctor. And he was just suggesting, what the information and the various experts out there were saying. And a lot of these supplements were to address specific things in my body one at a time and try and fix what I thought were all these broken pieces in my body. But I now do not believe that those supplements got me anywhere. I know that there are people out there, if you're watching and you've had success with specific supplements, amazing. I'm so glad that you figured that out. But for me, I would have ditched all of them. I would have saved myself so much stress trying to time them. I had this complicated system of when I was supposed to take things, morning, evening, before meals, with meals, at lunch. It was too much. Never mind all the money, and never mind really what was that doing to my body. I feel like it might have actually been making things worse. So for me, 0 supplements. I also would have stayed away from anything that cost a lot of money. In the end of my recovery, it wasn't free, but it wasn't expensive. I didn't need any of those big ticket items personally, or those big ticket programs. I bought like a far infrared sauna and had it installed in my basement and went on a really expensive sort of health retreat detox program and just dumped a lot of money that I didn't always have, and went into debt eventually, just out of desperation trying to get well. So I would just really accept or believe that, especially today, at the time of this filming, that there are so many options, there's so much information for free, and there are so many low-cost programs and options for information and support. And I didn't need any of that fancy, expensive stuff to get well. I don't think for the vast majority of people that recovery has to be really costly. There's also a really long list of specific things that I did when I was trying to get well that I would have done less of, or just none at all. Like I did constellation therapy, which was consulting your dead ancestors and kind of getting their permission to heal. And thanks for your efforts, guys, but I don't think it helped. Things like acupuncture, not helpful for me. I did rebounding, people were saying, on those little trampolines. I think that made me worse. Tell a person who has chronic fatigue syndrome that they need to jump on a trampoline. It was so stressful, but apparently it got things moving and helped you to heal. I'd try sitting on it, like bouncing on it. No, throw that thing away. I would have done less of or skipped entirely all the colon hydrotherapy and the enemas. Oh my goodness, that was so unpleasant, so not fun, and adding stress to my life. And I don't think that was my ticket to health. I also would have worried less about all the juicing. Like juice fasts in general have helped me, but for me, I think now my understanding is it's more about that break from the food than it is about the juice that I'm consuming. I used to think I needed these concentrated nutrients, and I kept a tray of wheatgrass in my kitchen where I'd cut it and juice it. And it was a lot of work when I didn't have a lot of energy, and it's a lot of money. And I don't think that was getting me anywhere. There are some things to focus less on, Raelan, and you, if this resonates for you. I'm sure there's more. I can't remember all of it, but that is kind of the big stuff. And here is what I would have done more of. Things that I put some focus on, but I think had I made them more of a priority, I would have gotten feeling better much quicker. I would have trusted my gut and my knowledge and my insight into my recovery way more. I used to think that whatever doctor, specialist, whoever I was talking to was the expert, and I pretty much just blindly followed for a long time whatever they said. And instead, and it took me a long time, and I started slowly doing this, but I would have done way more of it from the start, is just trusting myself. Does this make sense to me? Does this fit? I would have thought of all of these, experts out there as consultants and not disregard their advice, but just take all of it in and then decide myself what I wanted to do from there. And when I did my searches for information, I would have accepted sooner that, in my opinion, conventional medicine, it doesn't have a lot to offer in terms of recovery from these sorts of illnesses. So I'm going to have to search outside of that for the most part. And when I'm doing these searches, to always have the word recovery in my search, whether I'm looking in forums or chats or just recovery information or videos like this, because there's a lot of stuff out there that is really depressing and makes you feel really hopeless, which is one of the reasons that I just gave up searching, because I couldn't handle the way it felt every time I went online and I saw all this stuff telling me that I was doomed. So there is more and more information every day to help you. So don't give up on that information being there, and just be smart and strategic about the way that you search for it. And as I worked on my recovery, and I think as people in general work on their recovery, don't have this really long list of things that you need to do every day to recover. Like, here are the 12 things that are part of my recovery program. Really zero in on what do you think has the most value. Find that one or two things, just a small amount of things, and just really go all in on those things. Just put your focus on the things that you think are going to help, and then evaluate as you go. And if they're not helping, okay, then you readjust your plan and put your focus somewhere else. But when you're trying to do all of these different things, when you're incredibly sick, you just end up kind of doing a crappy job at all of them and getting stressed out by the whole process. So it comes back to that trusting your own knowledge and your own wisdom and your own insight into what is really going to be helpful for you. I also would have put more focus on pacing. And I know pacing can mean a whole lot of things. I don't mean anything rigid or regimented, crazy schedules to follow. I just mean getting out of that push-crash cycle, because that was kind of the zone that I lived in for a long time. I'd get a little bit of energy and it was really exciting. I'd feel a little bit better, and I'd just do all of those things that I'd been wanting to do that I couldn't do when I wasn't feeling well. And then I'd get these crazy symptom flares and feel terrible. And it was like one step forward, two steps back. And it's really hard to get anywhere when this is how you're living. And I also would have had a more conscious approach to my energy usage. So I would have looked at how much usable energy do I actually have for the most part on any given day, and how much of that energy is going toward things that are actually potentially going to help me heal, and how can I minimize the energy that's going out towards the things that aren't helping me heal, that aren't my priority right now. I actually did a free online course, I'll link it in the video description, that's all about this, about pacing in a way that is supporting your recovery. So it's in the video description if you want to check it out. I also would have paid a lot more attention to my language. Like you noticed just now, I said, sometimes I'd push too hard and then I'd crash, but then I corrected with symptom flare. Even just the word crash, I think, can send you into a crash. When we use this dramatic language, it is stressful, it is scary, and those fight or flight and all the fear assessment parts of our brain and our nervous system, autonomic nervous system, the limbic system, it's just this kind of language isn't helpful. I would have adopted much softer language when I talked about the things that I was experiencing. And I also would have talked about them a lot less. I would have minimized just that focus in general that my symptoms are getting. And then when I did talk about them, I'd be very careful, the words that I said, because everything in my body is listening. So if I'm saying I'm in a devastating crash and I'm telling people that every day, this isn't helping you to get out of it. I also would have got more support in terms of like a health coach. I never hired a health coach. I used to think that coaches were kind of really, I didn't think they had much to offer. I just thought they're just regular people. What are they going to know that I don't know? It's just more money to spend and more energy that I don't have. But I now understand that there are so many amazing coaches out there, many of them who have done a ton of training and have lived experiences that give them insights into this that is hard to find virtually anywhere else. And it's not about them having your answers, but it's about having someone to support you and validate your experience and for you to bounce ideas off of and to maybe ask you questions and help you think of things and look at things that you might not have thought of. Oh my goodness, if I could go back in time, I would have had a health coach as much as I possibly could. And lastly, and probably most importantly, is I would have learned everything I could about the autonomic nervous system, about the limbic system, about the amygdala, about how neural pathways are built in our brain, about the mind-body connection, about the brain and the autonomic nervous system and their capacity to create physical symptoms in our body, and what it is that is setting that off and how we can go about changing it. Because in my recovery, I did things to address this, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing. So I did bits of meditation, I did, therapy and journaling and that kind of stuff. Which was helping and addressing my autonomic nervous system and fight or flight and all of that. But I didn't understand it. If I could go back, I would have, like, whatever piece of the pie of my recovery pie that took up, I would have maxed it out. I would have put so much focus on that. I think that would have sped up my recovery by a bajillion percent. That is an actual statistic. I just can't overstate the importance of this one. Raelan, back then, 15 years ago, if you only listen to one thing in this video and you only take away one thing, listen to that. Take that in, write it down, start researching. I got lots of videos here on the channel. I can link some up here and in the video description. The information is there and it's really going to help you with your recovery. And lastly, one that I almost forgot to include is I would focus more on joy. Focus more on taking breaks from that fixation on recovery and fixing yourself and just finding ways to be happy. Pay attention throughout your day, the little things that make you happy. Write them down and figure out how you can do more of them. Bring more joy and love and connection and nature and time with animals and whatever you can do, because all of this on its own is addressing your nervous system and all of these components, and staying in that crazy, trying to rescue yourself mode all of the time isn't actually healthy and can start to work against you. All right, now what if I could go back? I would have done exactly the same. Raelan, 15 years ago, you're going to do these things. Don't change a thing in this department. And you watching, see what you think. I would have made myself an absolute priority, which I did when I eventually recovered. I got really selfish. I put myself in a bit of a bubble. I got really strict boundaries. I got really good at saying no. And I just made fixing me, not that I was broken, but made feeling well again my absolute priority. Even if I wasn't fixated on that every minute of every day, this was priority number one. Treat this like a very serious situation requiring all of your attention, asking for help when you need it, paying for things when you can manage it, because this is the priority. I also would have kept my focus on slowly increasing movement. I've talked about many times my exercise program. I do this because I don't know if it was actually should be called exercise to start, but I started with 1 minute a day or every second day, and then every week, roughly, I added on another minute. And this was just gentle movement in my living room. No weights, nothing high intensity, just maybe some push-ups off the wall or some gentle squats. And that was really important. And I would have, as I did finally in the end, accepted those symptom flares that sometimes come from that, as long as they're not too extreme, as okay and a normal part of the process. And just that understanding that the path out of this involves a little bit of back and forth. And for me, there was no getting better without occasionally feeling worse. I had to, now I understand, was, retraining my brain, and I had to push those boundaries a little bit because I had assessed everything in the world to be a threat and to be unsafe and to be making me sick. So I needed to just slowly show my autonomic nervous system and my amygdala that, okay, movement is okay. And every week I showed it that a little bit more movement is okay. And then a little bit more movement is okay. I also would have kept my focus on my gut health. I put a lot of focus on gut health when I recovered. This was through, cleaning up my diet. I think intermittent fasting helped me with this. A big one for me was eating or incorporating fermented foods into my diet, which are naturally rich in probiotics. So things like kefir and kombucha. Still to this day, I keep this up. Our gut health is connected to our autonomic nervous system. It's connected to our immune system. It's connected to our brain. It's often referred to as our second brain. So I think I put a lot of focus on gut health, and a lot of people that I have since interviewed have as well, and have got really good results from that. So if I could go back, I would do that exactly the same. Some other things that I put a lot of focus on that really helped are things like cold showers. Still to this day, I find them really helpful. Intermittent fasting is also really good for me. Massages I find incredibly helpful. There are so many benefits that come from them, more than I ever understood. I used to just think it was about the lymphatic system and, helping your body detox, but it's connected to so much more than that. Painting, having hobbies, having those things that broke me out of my my recovery bubble. Even though I was very focused and making myself a priority, I still, I wasn't perfect. I wasn't always focused on it. Sometimes I ate pizza. Sometimes I drank beer. Sometimes I forgot about my recovery entirely and just took a few days vacation with my husband and did what I could. So these are some of the things that I think were really core and essential and wouldn't have changed a thing. So those are some of the big ones. There's more. I could go on all day, but those are some of the key things that I wish I could send back in a time capsule to myself 15 years ago. I hope you found something in here helpful. If you did, let me know in the comments what kind of resonated for you, or what didn't I mention? What's been super helpful or unhelpful for you? Let's share it and let people know. And if you did find value out of this, if you haven't subscribed already, I invite you to consider subscribing and potentially becoming a channel member. And if you do, thank you again for the support. I'll link another video up here as well that if you enjoyed this one, that I think you might also find helpful. It's 75 recovery interviews that I did here summarized. So what I feel are the top 5 takeaways that are helpful for people who are working on their recovery from conditions like ME, CFS, and Long COVID. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope to see you in this next one.